We know that President Biden and President Zelensky talked for over an hour yesterday.
It's a little bit of deja vu because it still involves a Ukrainian president and a phone call with a U.S. president, but this time a different president, and certainly matters that are a lot more high stakes because we're talking about war. We're talking about invasions, potentially sacked capitals. Prepare for impact.
President Biden reaffirming US and allied readiness to respond decisively if Russia further invades Ukraine. But there are differences between the two on how significant the crisis and the threat of military action from Russia is.
He warned the Ukrainian leader that the capital, Kiev, this city here, could be sacked. And that's the word he apparently used, according to this Ukrainian official, sacked by Russian forces, who he said may attempt to occupy it.
White House, as Jordan said, comes back and said he didn't say the word sack. So what did he say? Destroyed, attacked? I don't know what he said, but there's a really easy way to clarify it, because let me tell you what happens when these calls take place. It's not 2 people listening. It's 50 people listening. Just release the transcript of what you said before we send our FOIA request demanding it, and they'll say national security will be litigating for 2 years. And look, and if you said it's going to be sacked, we need to know that too.
The embassy in Kiev writing in a statement the following: the security situation in Ukraine continues to be unpredictable due to the increased threat of Russian military action and can deteriorate with little notice.
If for some reason, Jay, President Biden has information that says it is more serious than President Zelensky is letting on, then he has to be willing to put forward what the United States is willing to do. To this point, Jay, the only thing we know about what the United States is willing to do is what they're not willing to do.
What has to happen here is the President of the United States needs to go to the podium and say, this is what I said, even if they don't release the transcript. Right. Let me tell you what I said. Let's be clear. This is what I told Zelensky.
Simple question yesterday. There's a press gaggle shouted out from Peter Doocy from Fox News.
Do you think inflation is a political liability ahead of the midterm?
That's a great asset. More inflation. What a stupid son.
Ooh, now it's angry Joe. Biden once promised to restore civility, telling his appointees he would fire them on the spot if they disrespected others. Of course, the rules, they don't apply to Joe.
It points to a much bigger issue. This isn't even about inflation. It's about inflation. It's about border insecurity. It's about Russia. It's about China. It's about Iran. It's about the world that under the Joe Biden method of doing all of this, guess what? It's not working. So what all of this is about is the political reality that Joe Biden now finds himself in.
He's no longer seen as competent and effective. He's no longer seen as a good commander-in-chief, or perhaps most damaging, as easygoing and likable. In fact, just 5% of adults say Mr. Biden has performed better than expected as president. One of the many lowest firsts and fewest in our poll.
This was President Biden's first day in office.
If you're ever working with me and I hear you treat another colleague with disrespect, talk down to someone, I promise you I will fire you on the spot.
Yeah, unless you're a reporter
for Fox News.
For Fox News or any, actually, I just want to juxtapose that because that's basically what he ran on. You don't like the personality of President Trump? You'll like my personality better.
He's also not seen as likable anymore. He was at 53% when he came into office as far as likability. He's now at 38%.
So when the pressure is up, which it is right now, people react. And Joe Biden's reaction is to belittle the reporters because the inflation issue right now is the number one issue in the country domestically.
Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer is retiring. And of course, we know that gives President Joe Biden a crucial opportunity to replace the liberal justice.
The pressure point on this is going to be to appoint someone who is very, very progressive and very, very liberal on this. And again, it's not a vote that changes the court's outcome.
What's important to note as well, that this would have an impact, obviously, on the scale of the court in general. This is considered, frankly, a win for the Democrat Party, a win for the progressive liberals. But that being said, let's dig into the background of whoever he does nominate and look forward to that being a contentious process as we've seen in the past.
This is not going to change the balance of the court. It might push the liberals more liberal.
They will seek to place on the court someone who gets approval from either AOC or Senator Warren.
During the campaign, President Joe Biden pledged to nominate a black woman. So we've got our eyes on several.
They're going to hold him to that, I think, the left and his party. Kamala Harris would also meet that standard. I mean, I think that would be an outlier. We look at that as a political move because she has not performed great as vice president. She would still be a liberal, trustworthy vote in the Supreme Court. And President Biden would be allowed to bring in a whole new team for his second in command.
They wanted very much for the President of the United States to get to make a choice here, and they wanted very much that if Justice Breyer was going to retire, that he do it as far away from the November elections as possible.
What you don't want to do is nominate somebody who hasn't been properly vetted and then have to pull them and then keep looking like a crisis president.
Right.
Who can't get his act together. So I think for the Biden team, this is a huge decision because they could get a win, pretty easy win, or they could cause disaster.
Rising tension between Russia and Ukraine has prompted the United States to remove much of its personnel from the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, ordering all non-essential workers and their families to get out of the country as soon as possible.
What is going to happen bad next? Because Afghanistan's a disaster. We've got ships and military activity going off the coast of Ireland. NATO conflicted on what to do. A president's inviting Russia in for at least some incursion. And the world is sitting there thinking, what's going to happen next? And the United States sure doesn't seem to be a reliable partner in any of this.
This morning, the Ukrainian government criticizing the US decision as premature and excessively cautious. The order comes as tensions mount in the region, with some fearing a Russian invasion could come at any time, despite consistent denials by the Kremlin.
We are literally talking about this not as a joke, but as a potential that they have let out into the media about U.S. troops engaging with Russian forces. I mean, has the world fallen that far under this kind of leadership that quickly?
As an ambassador in a country, that's one of your number one jobs, is protecting American citizens, getting them out. This should have been a plan of action a long time ago. We shouldn't even be in this situation where we're evacuating Americans.
We could be looking at 1,000 to 5,000 U.S. troops and then maybe up 10 times that, tenfold, so up to 50,000. I mean, to justify that kind of U.S. troop movement, you would think the president and his entire team would be out there selling this to the American people about why are we putting our men and women potentially in harm's way when we haven't armed the Ukrainians the way we could have.
Getting into a military shooting war with Russia would be catastrophic, okay? I mean, catastrophic. This is what elections consequences are. And like Jordan said, we don't even know the beginning of this yet.